When you lead a team or, manage an organization, you might think you're driving a car.
Right.
Like you turn the steering wheel to the left, the tires turn to the left, and the whole vehicle it goes exactly where you want it to go.
Right. It's a predictable machine.
Exactly. You are in the driver's seat. But put a real group of human beings into the mix, and you quickly realize you aren't driving a car at all. You're riding a horse.
That is a very different experience.
Yeah, and maybe that horse wants to go left. Or, I don't know, maybe it wants to eat some grass by the road. Or maybe it just wants to stand completely still no matter how hard you pull on the reins.
Which is incredibly frustrating for any leader.
Totally. So today our mission for this deep dive is to figure out what to do when those reins just stop working. We are exploring a brand new, highly analytical blog post published today, July 13th, 2026, by Reyna Monson.
It's a fantastic piece.
It really is, and it completely deconstructs this piece of leadership gospel that almost everyone has heard. The idea that as a leader, you are entirely responsible for creating and maintaining your organization's culture.
Well, it's a piece of advice that sounds, really great in a boardroom.
Yeah.
And to be fair, leaders do wield enormous influence. Monson actually validates that right up front.
Right. They have a lot of structural power.
Exactly. The leader sets the core values. They design the hiring process to act as a filter for those values. They control the budget, meaning they hold the ultimate leverage to reward behaviors they want, and they have the positional authority to penalize what they don't want.
And most visibly, they set the baseline by just modeling the culture themselves.
Right. But Monson introduces this deeply uncomfortable distinction that kind of challenges all of that structural power. She asks, are leaders really in control of culture?
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if our fundamental assumptions about forcing teams to adopt new behaviors are flawed, we really need to understand the mechanics of why they fail. And Monson gives us this perfect laboratory for this.
She really does.
We're going to examine what I'm calling the knowledge silo dilemma. So she was leading this highly skilled technical team and uncovered a massive operational vulnerability.
A really scary one for any business.
Oh, absolutely terrifying. Every single piece of crucial client data, the specific network quirks, admin passwords, custom workarounds, it all lived exclusively inside the individual technicians' heads.
Which is just the ultimate single point of failure in modern knowledge work.
Mm-hmm.
The company's most valuable asset is literally, walking out the door to the parking lot every evening.
Yeah, getting into their cars and leaving.
Right. If someone retires or takes a job at a competitor or just decides to, move to a cabin off the grid, that institutional knowledge vanishes completely without a trace.
I try to relate this to like a wildly successful Michelin-starred restaurant. Now imagine the master chef absolutely refuses to write down a single recipe.
The whole business is at risk.
Exactly. The waitstaff, the owner, the investors paying the rent, they're all essentially being held hostage by one person's brain. If that chef catches a cold, the entire kitchen just grinds to a halt.
So she had to do something about it.
Right. To fix this on her team, Monson makes this completely logical move. She decides to implement a centralized documentation system, basically a digital vault for her technical chefs to write down their recipes.
Makes perfect sense.
But here is my pushback, and I think a lot of people would wonder this. Since a system like this would obviously make everyone's job so much easier, why on earth did the team not care enough to change their behavior? I mean, they just didn't use it.
Well, what's fascinating here is the underlying behavioral economics of how the team actually reacted. Monson rolls out this system that is undeniably in the best interest of the company, and like you said, the team simply ignores it.
It's baffling.
It is. But when a leader introduces a new operational system, they usually think they're just fighting the friction of learning new software. Like, oh, people just don't want to learn a new interface.
Right, just basic tech resistance.
But they're actually fighting deeply ingrained human survival mechanisms. Monson theorized that the resistance was rooted in information asymmetry. Think about it. If a technician is the only person in the world who knows how to unfreeze a specific client's legacy server.
Oh, then that technician is indispensable.
Exactly. They hold all the cards.
So knowledge hoarding is actually a rational defensive strategy for them. If I write down exactly how I do my job, I am commoditizing my own value. I'm making myself replaceable.
That is the core of it. We tell people that knowledge is power all their lives, and then we ask them to voluntarily redistribute their power into some company database.
Wow. Yeah, when you put it that way, it makes total sense why they'd resist.
But beyond just protecting their turf, Monson recognized a systemic hurdle, the empty database problem. It's a vicious chicken and egg scenario.
This is essentially the cold start problem in technology, right? Like when you launch a brand new social network, you download the app, but none of your friends are on it yet.
Right. It's just a ghost town.
Because your friends aren't there, there is no content to scroll. Because there's no content, you just close the app, which guarantees the network stays empty for the next person who tries it.
That maps perfectly onto Monson's team. A technician logs into the new documentation system looking for a password. The password isn't there because no one has documented it yet.
So they get frustrated.
Exactly. The technician realizes the system is useless to them in that exact moment, so they log out without documenting the project they just finished themselves, perpetuating the cycle.
So the system requires collective participation to have any individual value?
Yes, but individuals refuse to participate until the system already has value. It's a complete deadlock.
Okay, so faced with this behavioral deadlock, Monson decides to grip the steering wheel tighter. She launches a relentless top-down intervention.
The classic management playbook.
Exactly. She puts it on every meeting agenda. She highlights the operational benefits. She tracks the metrics of who is logging in. And when all of that fails, she deploys a tactic that I just find absolutely fascinating in its absurdity, the sticker board.
Oh, the sticker board. It is a beautiful monument to leadership desperation.
It really is. So get this. She puts up a giant physical board in the tech room to track documentation goals for a team of highly skilled adult IT professionals.
Just incredible.
And when a tech completes an assignment, they walk up to the board and place a sticker on it. She even let them pick out their own specific stickers to foster a sense of ownership.
Which is hilarious.
It's so funny. And the result, the board itself became a fun novelty. The techs actually loved the stickers.
Yeah.
But the actual quality and frequency of the documentation remained completely abysmal.
They just gamed the system.
Right. People only did the absolute minimum to get the sticker back. Now, I really want to push back on Monson's strategy here because it's obvious that treating grown engineers like kindergartners with dinosaur stickers wouldn't actually change their culture.
Yeah, it seems pretty doomed from the start.
So why did a smart leader resort to this? Isn't this just a case of bad incentive design? Shouldn't a leader use real leverage, like, I don't know, financial bonuses or threats?
Well, that is a highly critical but very fair assessment. I mean, when leaders exhaust their logical arguments, they frequently reach for behavioral levers they don't fully understand.
Right, they just grab whatever is closest.
Exactly. But let's analyze those alternatives you mentioned. A lot of leaders would look at the sticker board and say, well, you used a weak incentive. You need a hard incentive. Tie their annual bonus to their documentation metrics, or threaten to put them on a performance improvement plan if they don't comply.
Bring out the actual carrots and sticks. Treat them like adults.
But that completely misunderstands the nature of complex knowledge work. If top-down incentives like stickers, bonuses, and threats actually worked to change culture, every company would run perfectly.
True, and they definitely do not.
Right. The reality is that extrinsic motivators crowd out intrinsic motivation. If you tie documentation to a financial bonus, you will absolutely get more documentation.
But I'm guessing the quality isn't great.
Exactly. You will get the exact minimum quality required to trigger the payout. Just a bunch of useless text. Or, if you use a threat of firing, you breed resentment. You get malicious compliance.
What does that look like in this situation?
A technician might write a manual just to avoid getting fired, but they will write it in a way that is so overly complex and jargon-heavy that literally no one else can actually understand it.
Oh, wow. So they check the box for management, but they completely preserve their own knowledge silo in the process.
Which means the leader bought compliance, but they failed to change the culture. Monson's profound realization wasn't that she needed better stickers or a more aggressive bonus structure.
Yeah.
It was the realization that no amount of leadership incentivizing can force genuine cultural buy-in. A leader can build the framework, they can buy the software, they can demand compliance, but they cannot mandate belief.
Which forces us to ask, if the boss can't force adults to change their behavior, what actually does?
And this is where the story pivots.
Right, because for Monson, the answer didn't come from a new management strategy. It came from the most unexpected place. After 9 months of futile nagging, 2 of the most senior technicians on the team suddenly shifted their stance.
Just out of nowhere, it seemed.
Yeah, they decided the documentation system was actually a good idea. And Monson's internal reaction was basically, great idea, I've only been saying that for 9 months. But she points out that they didn't do it because of her speeches. They did it because the knowledge silo was actively causing them pain.
Causality is everything here. You have to ask, why does someone actually change their mind? As the senior technicians, they were the ones bearing the heaviest load.
Right, they were the ultimate safety net.
Exactly. They were the ones getting a frantic phone call at 6 p.m. on a Friday because a junior tech couldn't figure out a legacy server, and the senior tech was the only one with the workaround stuck in their head.
So it was ruining their weekends.
Basically, yeah. The pain of constantly being interrupted, of never truly being off the clock, it finally outweighed the perceived security of hoarding the knowledge.
The friction of the old way finally became greater than the friction of learning the new way. And once those two specific individuals bought in, the entire dynamic of the room inverted.
It changed everything.
It was no longer the boss nagging the employees. It was peers setting standards for peers. These two senior techs started reminding people to log their notes. They began actively challenging their teammates who were slacking off.
They took ownership of it.
They created a brand new peer-enforced boundary. They started telling each other, you haven't finished the ticket if you haven't documented it.
That single phrase is just a profound redefinition of the work itself. Think about it. When leadership says document your work, the team hears an administrative burden. They hear the boss wants a new report.
Right, it's just red tape.
But when the senior technicians say, you haven't finished the ticket, they are declaring a new tribal norm. They are saying, this is the baseline of what it means to be a professional in this specific group.
It fundamentally changes the leverage. It's like a parent telling a teenager to wear a certain brand of shoes, right?
The teenager is going to resist that instantly.
Exactly. But contrast that with the coolest kid in school wearing those exact same shoes. The parent has authority, sure, but positional authority simply cannot compete with social authority.
That distinction right there between positional capital and social capital is the hidden engine of every organization. The leader has positional capital. They control the payroll and the organizational chart.
But the senior technician.
Right. The senior technician, the one everyone naturally goes to when the server crashes and everything is on the line, they hold the social capital. Monson learned that culture doesn't shift when the person with the positional capital demands it. Culture only shifts when the people with the social capital champion it.
And the outcome of that shift was staggering. I mean, once the social leaders took over, Monson says the company generated so much documentation it would take multiple reams of paper to print it all out.
It became second nature to them.
The mindset completely transformed. The team literally cannot imagine functioning without the system today. The culture changed solely because respected members of the team decided it should.
Which is amazing, but it also opens up a whole new set of challenges for leaders.
It really does. Which brings us to a much broader and frankly more intimidating application of this dynamic. If peer influence is the true catalyst for cultural change, how does a leader intentionally harness it without suffocating it?
It requires a really counterintuitive approach to management, one that actually requires the leader to strategically surrender their positional authority.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because one of Monson's technicians eventually introduced her to a concept to foster exactly this kind of environment. It's called the players' meeting.
It's a very common practice in sports.
Yeah. Right. And the concept is brutally simple. The team gathers in a room to solve internal friction and operational problems, but leadership is strictly forbidden from attending. No coaches, no managers, no directors allowed.
It is a deliberate creation of a vacuum. A space completely devoid of positional authority, leaving only social authority to govern the room.
But I have to push back on this on behalf of every anxious manager listening right now, because this sounds like a terrifying loss of control. Isn't intentionally leaving the room a dereliction of duty?
It definitely feels that way to a lot of leaders.
Monson even admits the intense discomfort this causes leaders. You know, you are sitting outside that closed door, staring at the wood, inevitably wondering, what are they saying in there?
Are they talking about me?
Exactly. Are they complaining about my leadership? Are they conspiring to lower their performance targets? Isn't there a massive irresponsible risk in letting your team operate completely blind without management oversight?
That anxiety is entirely justified. And I think it speaks to how deeply we are conditioned to believe that managerial presence equals operational control. But think about the underlying mechanics of human behavior when authority is present.
Okay.
Why does a sports captain call a players-only meeting? It usually happens when the team is underperforming, the locker room is fractured, and the players need to hold each other to a higher standard. If the head coach is standing right there in the room, the players cannot be fully honest.
Right, because they are performing for the person who controls their playing time.
Exactly.
They are managing up. They're playing politics instead of actually solving the problem.
You nailed it. The presence of positional authority creates an artificial environment. People become defensive. They just say what they think the boss wants to hear. But when the coach leaves, the performative politics evaporate.
So it gets real.
The environment shifts to raw peer-to-peer accountability. The veteran player can look the rookie in the eye and say, "Your lack of preparation is letting the rest of us down." And that feedback hits with a completely different psychological weight than a manager delivering it in some formal performance review.
Because it is coming from someone who shares the consequences of the failure. They're in the trenches together.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture of what Monson learned with the documentation system, we see the strategic brilliance of the players' meeting. There are vital, friction-filled conversations that a team desperately needs to have to establish their culture.
And the leader's presence actually prevents those from happening.
Yes, the leader's very presence stifles it. The anxiety the leader feels outside the door. The fact that they don't know what is being said is actually proof that the mechanism is working.
That's a huge mindset shift.
It is. The team is finally utilizing their internal social authority to resolve their own friction. Monson argues that sometimes the absolute best, most courageous leadership move you can make is to stop talking, physically leave the room, and just trust the ecosystem you built to balance itself.
It completely redefines the job description of a leader. So what does this all mean for you navigating your own team or organization? Monson lands on a beautiful synthesis of her experience here.
It's a great takeaway.
Leaders are absolutely responsible for culture. You cannot abdicate that responsibility. You set the expectations, you provide the strategic direction, you purchase the software tools, and yes, you can even buy the sticker board.
If you really want to.
Right. But you must never confuse your responsibility for the environment with direct control over the human beings operating within it. True, lasting cultural change is never a top-down mandate. It only happens when it is adopted, enforced, and championed by the people actually doing the work.
And this raises an important question, one that I think exposes the double-edged sword of everything we have discussed today.
Oh, I like where this is going.
We have seen the incredible positive momentum that social authority can generate in Monson's story. The senior techs, the social leaders, they decided documentation was a good idea, and the team's culture thrived. But what happens when the exact opposite is true?
Oh, wow, the dark side of peer influence.
Exactly. If peer influence is the true engine of cultural change, and leaders must sometimes strategically leave the room to let it flourish, what is a leader supposed to do when the most respected senior members of a team are actively championing a toxic culture?
That is a scary thought.
What if your highly skilled veterans are the ones telling the junior staff, "Hey, we don't need to document anything, that's just management busywork, ignore it"? How do you, as a leader, regain influence when the social leaders of your team are utilizing their capital to drive the entire herd off a cliff?
That is a phenomenal, deeply challenging question, and definitely something to analyze in the context of the complex social webs in your own workplace. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Reyna Monson's insights.
It's been a great discussion.
It really has. The next time you find yourself frustrated that your team isn't adopting a new process, remember the limits of the steering wheel. You might be completely responsible for the journey, but you are not driving a car. You are riding a horse. And sometimes the only way forward is to drop the reins and trust the social leaders of the herd to find the path. Catch you next time.